start football in high school freshman year, you usually keep going. You start on the chess team, you usually keep going. So another girl from my church, at the time her name was Nicole, she hated Shannon. She just despised Shannon for whatever reason. I don't know. Between her and Shannon, I had nothing to do with them. She did not want Shannon having any kind of close friendship. And this girl was younger than me. This girl was like 12 when I was 15, maybe 13. I don't know. This girl just hated Shannon so much she felt like she had to get back at Shannon. And so she targeted me. She devised a plan with a girl named Mary to create a fake boy, to talk, text with me on the phone, get me intimately involved, let me share things with her. I don't know if you guys realize, Mary was 24 years old, doing this to a 15-year-old she didn't even know. They created this guy, they named him Nick, that I talked with. He made me feel loved and adored. When I felt rejected, he made me feel accepted. Where I felt ugly, he made me feel beautiful. And when I felt worthless, he made me feel like I was the most important person on the planet. It's something every girl wants to feel in general, but in freshman year of high school, that's really when we're just kind of like, we really want that attention. We really strive for that. I can still remember a lot of specific details about this guy, whomever I talked to, whether they were truth or not. I still remember specific details down to favorite food being spaghetti, spoke Italian, favorite sport hockey, different things like that. I can remember to the T what they were. One night, we spent literally the entire night talking on the phone. Literally, like, I fell asleep on the phone. The next morning I woke up, and it was still, like, connected. And I was like, hello? And he's like, hi. I was like, weird. He spent his time, he devoted his time to make me feel safe and to make me feel secure. For me to share my most intimate feeling. He had spent his time devoting it to making sure that I felt like, hey, this is weird. What's up with this? I had not physically met him, but in my mind, I thought I knew he was the one. Of course, at 15 years old, like, how can you really know who's the one? But at 15 years old, you're like, I know it. But now that I look back, I'm like, seriously, you were 15. He sent me pictures, like, with my name in the snow, because he had went to Chicago for that Christmas. That's why we couldn't see each other. So, I remember just having it framed. Well, this charade went on for about a month, and it started on December 5th, and on New Year's Day is when I found out that it was all just one big practical joke. I felt rejected, I felt worthless, I felt ugly, but most of all, I felt humiliated. I questioned God. I didn't understand why he would allow something like this to happen. I don't know if any of you guys can really understand in one single moment, and I remember that single moment like it was yesterday, that everything that I had come to believe was shattered right before my eyes. I was desperate to not face reality, and to not face that it was all just one big practical joke. This Nick persona was built up, and for a year later, this Jerry persona, aka Nick, was built up because I didn't want to face reality. I didn't want to feel ugly anymore. I didn't want to feel worthless anymore. So I chose to not accept it. I chose to say, no. I was tired of being the girl that the guys go to get her best friend's number. I wanted to be the girl that had gotten the guy's number. I was tired of being the second string player, because that's what I always was. I was always the second string player, and I was tired of it, and I didn't want to accept it. I would have rather not faced reality than to feel rejected again. If I had to really pinpoint one moment that really kind of just led me downhill, this was it. It was the ultimate rejection, but I think what hurts the most is that Nicole went to my church. I trusted her solely based on the fact that she was a fellow Christian. And that really began to break my security and trust in Christians in general, in God in general. Because if God would let one of his supposedly followers do this, that's not what I want. That's not the kind of God that I want. Wanted. Well, not now. So this began just a chain reaction of self-destructive behavior. He made me feel beautiful and worthy, when in reality, only Jesus can do that. I didn't have that in Jesus at that time. I didn't feel that from Jesus at the time. I was looking to the world for something that only Jesus can fulfill. I allowed a boy to fill a void that only Jesus can. I wasn't as intimate with Jesus as I am now. I just want to say this. If you love Jesus, if you say you love Jesus so much, if you say you love Jesus so much, is your relationship so fulfilling that if the enemy strategizes his best plans against you, could he turn you away? That's something to really do a reality check on yourself. How close is your relationship with God right now? Because if the enemy strategizes his worst plans against you where he knows you're the most vulnerable, would he succeed? Or is your relationship strong enough to where you're like, God, you got me? Because that's how I am now. I'm like, God, the enemy can throw whatever he wants at me now, but I'm going to surrender myself to you. But at that time, I wasn't like that. The enemy had won that battle, but he did not win the war. It propelled me into a downward spiral of self-destruction. My best friend Eric introduced me to drugs. He'd give me whatever he had, and I would take it. I wouldn't ask. I would just play Russian roulette with my life. I didn't care. I became addicted to pornography. I met people online just for sex. I can't even describe how bad my life really went out of control. My life was about as dark as it has been in my entire life. Well, Eric committed suicide, and that really turned me even further away from God. We think we can numb our pain with earthly things. I won't deny that drugs, I won't deny that sex don't numb the pain, because they do, but they don't heal the pain. That's the thing, is you just keep going on and you keep numbing it and you keep numbing it because you don't want to face it. It goes back to not wanting to face reality. By numbing it, you're like, I'm rejecting that this is reality. But if you accept this is reality, you accept, okay, God, this is reality. Now I want to be healed from my reality and make a new reality. Not only did I refuse to allow myself to heal through Jesus, but I had to suffer the repercussions and the shame that followed, in making me feel more worthless, and that feeling only kept escalating. I thought that I was self-medicating. I thought that I was healing myself, when in reality, I was self-destructing. My choices made my wounds deeper, and it made my consequences and my shame more transparent. I was putting a bandage over my wound instead of getting all of the gunk out and really doing a deep cleaning. I was only trapping bacteria in rather than letting it out. But that's what the enemy wants. That's exactly what the enemy wants. I was allowing the enemy to work in me instead of allowing God to work in me. As I kept entering into sexual behavior, the wounds just kept getting deeper. The soul ties kept getting stronger, and I allowed the enemy to convince me that God had forsaken me. The truth was always there that God did not forsake me, but I refused to see it. I was so mad at God that I wanted to make him feel the way that I felt. I wanted to make him feel betrayed. I wanted to make him feel hurt. I wanted to make him feel angry because that's how I was feeling. I allowed myself to create many different masks that would hide how I was actually feeling. I didn't want my family really understanding the depth of my pain. I didn't want them to really hurt the way I was hurting. So I continued to hide it from them. I didn't want to bring more attention to myself. And I didn't want to hurt them because I was hurting. So I kept putting mask after mask until I didn't even realize I was wearing one anymore. Okay, so let me say this. For all you girls who have not given yourself sexually, please wait until marriage. Okay? For you girls who have given yourself sexually to a guy, you can be restored. Okay? I don't know if I can really stress this enough, how important it is. You know, when you continually to give yourself up, you're giving little bits of pieces away. And I'm telling this from firsthand experience. We as a society have really skewed what it's all about, what sex is all about in general. Society tells us that it's okay to go around and be having sex before marriage. But you don't really understand the consequences of what that entails. When you go around having sex after sex, guy after guy, you don't really understand the consequences until you can see more clearly because you refuse to see it. I refused to see it. I didn't want to see it, so I didn't see it. It was that simple for me. I just didn't want to see it. Every time that you give yourself, you are just becoming more and more just like less of you and more of the enemy is what you're doing. At the time, it's not easy to see the consequences, but we need to stop listening to the world and start listening to the Word, because that is the only truth in this entire world. That is the only truth, is right there. When I was having sex, I knew what I was doing was wrong. In the back of my head, every single time that I was intimate with someone, I could remember hearing, "This is not the life I have for you." But what I did is I chose to ignore it. I didn't want to listen to it. I wanted that instant satisfaction that met an immediate personal need, but it only left me more emotionally scarred. In all honesty, as much as it shames me to say this, I could not tell you how many guys I have slept with. I can't count. I have lost track. The second one was one too many. You need to stick with what God knows is best for you, because He does. He doesn't want you to hurt. And when you continually to give yourself, you continually to cause yourself more pain. He knows that because He knows what's best for you. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that the consequences are real. It's easy to listen to your friends when all your friends are doing it, but that's the enemy talking and not God. Because the pain is real and I chose to shut it out. It goes back to not wanting to face reality. You know what? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. I kept self-medicating in hopes of being healed. I was just like, I'm just going to keep doing all this stuff. I'm going to keep having sex. I'm going to keep doing all these different drugs. I'm going to keep doing this in hopes of being healed one day. I wasn't getting healed. But I kept doing the same thing over and over and over again because I was like, hey, maybe one day it might change. But in reality, I was only shackling myself even further into chains of bondage. I just want to say, like, if any of you girls, like, need to talk about any of this, you know, I am available because I do understand what it's like to understand the ramifications of doing something outside of God's will. Around a year ago, it was November of last year, I had decided that I was going to go visit family in New York. That previous year, I was a caregiver to my grandmother. She was on a feeding tube, and, you know, I had volunteered. I was going through some medical issues at the time, and I volunteered that, you know, I would kind of take on the role of a caregiver. That way it takes less stress off my parents. That way, you know, they could still continue to work and pay the bills. But that way, you know, I could, you know, I'll be her caregiver. My aunts, when I went up there, my aunts had the expectations that I was going up there to continue caring for my grandmother because my grandmother had also went up to New York. But I had thought I had explained that, you know, I wanted to go up there to get to know my other grandparents that I had never been around. You know, maybe once or twice as a child, but I didn't really know my grandparents. And I felt, well, I'm not working right now, so I feel like this is a good opportunity for me to really get to know them. Well, my family up there just started treating me really bad after they realized why I was going up there. They continually made me feel rejected in a city where the only people I knew was my family. So my safe place was my grandparents' house. I did end up staying there the rest of the time. And right, literally like in walking distance from my grandparents' house was this little Baptist church. This was like small town, and literally like their neighbor was the pastor of this church. Like, it's that small. And so, you know, throughout these few months that I was up there, I had really just fell in love with Jesus again. I really fell in love with who Jesus was. I remember the series we were doing was the Andy Stanley series, Twisting the Truth. And I remember that this being a pivotal moment and really having me want to want Jesus again. But